Well, what a compelling evening we've had here at the Leeds International Festival of Ideas. Who Rules the World has just finished, and I'm joined by some of the people who led this powerful discussion. Tom Burgis, Sam McAlister and Matthew Syed as well. Thank you for joining us on LIFITV. Did you figure out who rules the world?
Matthew does.
Matthew, you do.
Well, I'm glad they pointed that out.
Yeah.
My feeling all the way. I've got to say, first of all, I love being here.
Great.
Just the sense of intellectual excitement and engagement in the audience and brilliant fellow panelists. Although I just went up to do a book signing with both of you, and I was harangued by one of the audience members, a pensioner, who said that my argument on the triple lock, which was part of the discussion, was completely wrong. And she explained why. And I've got to say, I was very chastened at the end of that.
You did look chastened.
Honestly, I felt that I had been put back in my cage.
Yeah.
But would you not say it was a wonderful sense in there? It went so fast. I thought an hour and a half it flew by, and it was, I thought, really well hosted as well.
Yeah, I had a punter come up to me, the opposite demographic, young lad doing his A-level essay on how the media shaped by foreign policy. And I just thought, he had a great buzz about him, and I was thinking, right, okay, well, here's someone who's starting to grapple with these things. He's come out. There's just something about the atmosphere in that room.
He did ask a question.
He asked a question, yeah. But I felt like something in the atmosphere in that. I felt like we struggled to find positive things to say, and there was something about the atmosphere in the room and our ability to disagree civilly that contain the germs of the kind of things we'd hope to happen. Right?
Totally agree. I think those are the two core things, right? The disagreeing civilly is such a lost art, and it is the thing that can give us optimism, because without the kind of like dissection of everything from one extreme to the other, we've got some hope. And second of all, the reason that live events are so amazing is because of that magic chemistry in the room.
Yeah.
That young lad, the person that lambasted you, whoever was cheering for you and booing us or whatever it was, that live element cannot be found anywhere else, and that's why people kindly pay their money.
Yeah. You know, we don't talk enough about politics. I don't know if you've got... I mean, it's often a taboo subject, let's stay off politics. To be in a room talking to really bright, intelligent fellow panelists who had a different point of view, I was learning and listening. Then when the questions came in, there's something... You're right, there is something magical about that. I think we need more of it, and I'm so glad that you were able to put it together in such a conducive forum, a great space.
Yeah, and of course, I mean, it's the whole idea of the Festival of Ideas, isn't it? It's to put people in a room rather than have this discussion on social media or even do something on YouTube where people are sort of involved in the comments. What is it about being in the room where you can see somebody's face? Matthew, you said one or two things and you felt like, maybe the crowd weren't on board. If it was a football stadium.
The thing about seeing the fact, when we're with you, I don't feel the magic anymore.
The magic is gone.
Yes, yeah.
It's got, no, I'm kidding.
I walked into that, but I'm also furious about the triple lock.
Yeah, quite right.
To answer your question, I mean, it's something I said to Prince Andrew when I was doing the negotiation, which is that if you want to give a credible line about yourself, then people need to look you in the eye. Now, figuratively in that case, because there was a camera between them, but something about being in the presence with people, that old school human interaction, which we've all dislocated from with Instagram and social media, that is just something comforting about it and electrifying.
And you set up that interview with Prince Andrew.
I did.
Which was one of probably the most significant BBC programmes. But can I ask you a question?
You can ask me a question. Sorry, Aaron.
So that's all right. I'm happy with this.
But weirdly, that interview was going out, and I used to do something called the Sky Newspaper Review.
Yes.
Where you would get the papers in and you'd look at... And it's obvious as I'm driving in, and I'm listening to it on the iPlayer in the car, plugged in. And it got to the end of it. And I remember getting into the studio, and I'd listened to it, but obviously driving, and it didn't seem as much of a car crash. What was your feeling at the end? Well, I suppose you knew what had happened before it went out, but did you think it was a car crash at the time it happened?
Oh my God, yeah. I was in a room 15 feet behind him, and I used to be a barrister, as I mentioned, criminal defence, and I'm a journalist, and half of me is going, holy hell, the prosecution has just won the lottery.
Yeah, this won't hold up.
Exactly.
So just completely obvious, the answers were ridiculous in real time.
And in the visual, and interesting you said you heard it in audio, because the next morning somebody had to go on the Today programme, and that person happened happened to be someone you might have heard of who does a podcast called Alistair Campbell.
Yes.
And he may or may not have said something along the lines of, I don't see what the big deal was, which
Interesting.
turned out to be slightly different and discordant from the public.
Maybe
view.
it's because he wasn't sweating.
Yeah, but it's funny. Then we did start, and before I went on, it became clearer. But I was wondering what it was like in real time. It was an amazing interview, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, spectacular.
I mean, amazing story overall. And sorry, Tom, just to interrupt you there for a second. As part of the discussion tonight, I have to say I was sort of standing at the back and making some notes and thinking about what you were saying. And I don't, this is my age, and clearly the young lad who spoke to you might have been a bit more encouraging, but everything felt vaguely terrifying to me. And then I started to think back and thought, when I was a teenager and my parents thought everything was terrifying, is this just a sort of, you go through your life and eventually you go, everything's really terrifying, and now it doesn't matter anymore when you get sort of towards the end. But do you have this? I mean, you're looking into sort of the worst behaviours in the world, and I mean that in a sense of the impact that it has on tens of thousands of people all the time. How do you sort of not fall into a pit of utter despair?
Well, who does I haven't?
Well, no, yeah.
No.
Sorry, tell us. What I mean is,
in the green room, I went and he was sat there with his head in his hand.
what I mean is, tell us about your pit of despair. Yeah.
Well, I would say two things, and I'd also like to just pick on something Matthew said. First of all, the people at the towering heights of the global kleptocracy are united in their vanity, which is quite often hilarious. As you know, Trump being a perfect example of this, and the people I've written about in these various books, their almost physical need to control their image and control how the world perceives them. You see it in Trump every day. Is hysterically funny. I mean, the most powerful man in the world is a man who just couldn't bear the fact that his spokesman said from the podium in the White House, one of the most authoritative places to stand in the world, you know, he said, "I've seen this guy sink 3-foot putts," and this is sacrosanct, right? The White House press briefing room record cannot be altered. It is what was said.
What say that? What happened?
So Anthony Scaramucci, when he was briefly the Trump spokesman for about 25 minutes,
It was 12 days. I used to call it a mooch.
he said the mooch, yeah. When the mooch was the spokesman, he was riffing about Trump, standing at the press briefing room's podium, and he said, "I've seen this guy do this, do that. You know, I've seen him hole 3-foot putts." I mean, 2 days later, what does it say on the official transcript of the White House briefing? He says, "I've seen this guy sink 30-foot putts."
Oh, it's been altered.
Yeah, so there's first of all, so there's a bleak humour in all of this. Second of all, there is something darker about this that goes back to actually where I started writing about corruption, which was when I started writing about the worst consequences of corruption, which is horrific violence in places where the protection that the state might offer its citizens has been turned on its head and it's become predatory. So in Nigeria, where I was living at the time, and I thought a lot about the massacres I covered and the bodies I've counted and the villages I've seen. And what you realise, I think, and we touched on this, I think, tonight about no one ever thinking they're the bad guys, is that the real importance, I think, of civil disagreement, but also of the institutions that hold us in check, of the rule of law, of a commons, of a free press and so on, is not just to make sure that I can try and dissuade Matthew from murdering me, but also to stop to control my own darker angels, that we all have these possibilities of, in the right circumstances where the institutions that we build to protect us break down, we're all capable of these terrible things. And I think, Christ, I am now heading into a pit of despair.
Yeah. It's going to be Jordan Peterson.
I forgot what the question was. But no, I get what you mean.
But did you feel me being drawn into the pit?
Yes.
Over the event
the world is. I mean, I think it's clear the world is dangerous at the moment. There are risks, existential risks, nuclear war, AI, an engineered bacteriological weapon. I mean, these are risks that didn't exist. Some of them are, well, none of those existed 100 years ago.
Do you think though that we are, I mean, take the climate crisis and so on, AI, are we just going through the sort of standard middle-aged angst and applying the details, or is this a more sort of objectively a more apocalyptic time?
Fundamentally different. Cannon couldn't destroy the species. Guns can't destroy the species. You need too many guns. Whereas these are systemic risks. A nuclear winter could destroy agriculture and wipe out the species in toto. So could a bacteria. I mean, it's not inconceivable that you could have a pathogen engineered with a very high infection fatality rate and a long incubation period. They published the sequence for Spanish flu on the internet a decade ago. We're democratizing the capacity to destroy human civilization. And the problem isn't just the people who die today, but all future people who could have lived who won't get the chance to live. Over the last 250,000 years, we've only got to that threshold within the last 50 to 100 years. So this last paragraph of the human story is absolutely endemic with existential risk, and no one talks about
Should we maybe call it the current paragraph rather than the last paragraph?
the current.
See, you are an optimist.
The latest.
So is it, I don't think it's middle age. I think this is a singular period in our
What about this thing of civilly disagreeing? Because you just said before, like you don't feel like you talk about politics. I don't feel like I talk about politics very much
I've
too.
got lots of political friends, like literal politicians, and I do not talk about politics.
But I think, we go through. But I think maybe the exhaustion of Brexit is part
I agree.
of that. So everyone just ran out of arguing juice, and then the pandemic when we weren't allowed to talk to anyone or meet them up. But anyway,
I do think Brexit.
Maybe
was
we
the
need to
beginning.
relearn these things.
Totally agree with you. So I think Brexit was the beginning because people became emboldened to say things like, I'm not talking to my grandma because, or my friend is dead to me, or you're dead to me.
Yep.
And it became really emboldened. And I think that process is still lingering with us.
Do you know, it's interesting this. So I've been a member of the Labour Party almost all my life, stood for Labour. I still feel I'm very much in the centre of British politics. I feel that politics has shifted around me a bit, and I probably made the mistake of saying in print I joined the Conservative Party because they seem to be getting more serious about controlling public debt. I mean, whether they stick to this is a different question. My goodness, the amount of people who are upset by this. I think it's much easier.
In your family or just...
No, not really. I think, no. I think they kind of probably feel not dissimilarly. My mum, my wife, dad's passed away. Yeah, I don't know that but other people. So this is interesting for me that when I was known as a Labour member, it's kind of like, oh, nice person.
Nice Matthew.
Clearly a sympathetic person. But now I'm worried about debt, which is, by the way, based on compassion. Because we're not going to be able to afford to give welfare to anyone in 20 years because the interest will be eating us alive. It's a very straightforward proposition, but people are, oh my goodness. And honestly, it's almost like I've contracted a rare disease.
They're coming for you.
That point you make on debt, though, that I wanted to say it, but didn't. You were putting it better than I could have done. But the idea that trying to control debt is some sort of crazed right-wing idea is a complete mistake. Right? Marx was big on this.
Right.
On the idea of what's left-wing about hooking up your fate to the bond market.
Yeah.
I mean, by running massive debts and undercutting democracy in that way.
It's a very that is another very unusual period. I mean, Britain very rarely ever ran a deficit if they were not outside a major war. They were running surpluses for the really hard times that might come. And we have run deficits during recoveries. We've printed money during recoveries. We're in an extraordinarily unusual position, but politicians don't really talk about it because they're all incentivized to outflank each other with the giveaways they offer in the here and now.
In the short term. What was interesting about the discussion for me was that even though it began as who rules the world, obviously we talked about politics, we talked about climate, you've brought superbugs into the equation. Now, lots of things for us to feel cheery about, nuclear winters, that sort of thing. I think it seems to me the conclusion is whoever rules the world, they're not doing it for the good of the human beings that live on planet Earth at the moment. Would that be a fair summary of everything that's been talked about?
What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's very hard to feel any connection to the people that run the world. And actually, one of the things about leaving news is that it's much easier to be cheery. Good news, if you believe. I mean, I was working, for 15 years at the coalface of news, and the things you learn about what humans can do to one another, how humans behave, geopolitics, debt, deficit, whatever it is. And to have stepped away from that and sense to have had a toxic cleanse, I engage with news less, although I don't think I'm any less intellectually engaged with the world or less compassionate or less caring or less clever. But that disengagement has made me feel ironically much more empowered. And so perhaps I'm in a beautiful delusion, but I'm happy to stay here.
So you're taking which was the blue pill?
Yeah.
Whose is the book? Human Kindness. Somebody might have read
Yeah,
this book.
Rutger Bregman.
Yes. So that's required reading at least once a year, I think. Well, thank you so much, all three of you, for joining us on LIFITV.
There was a big mistake in that book, though.
Oh, well,
I think.
okay, let's do another episode.
Oh, sorry. The way he characterised the world before agriculture is like a beautifully friendly place.
Yeah. Well, this is required. Everyone watching this will have to read the book now to get the reference.
No, they should read Matthew's book. That's what they should
and
do.
Matthew's
Or
book,
Tom's
and everybody's books. And read
Sam's book is
Yeah.
I did okay out of it. I got a Netflix deal. It's all good.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for all of you and for your time and your insight tonight. And to everyone who joined us tonight at the Leeds Playhouse, and to you for watching here on LIFITV. There is loads more from LIFITV on the Leeds International Festival of Ideas website.